Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
You just watched the head coach of the Chicago Bears go to war for a wide receiver that half the draft community had rated as a seventh-round flyer. And look, I don't know about you, but when a head coach who just came from Detroit, who helped build one of the most explosive offenses in the entire NFC, looks into that camera and tells the world that guys like this don't grow on trees, I stop scrolling, I sit all the way up, because that tells me something is quietly brewing on the lakefront that the rest of the NFL is not remotely prepared for. What is going on, everybody? This is Fave. Welcome back to Favs, and today we are pulling back the curtain on the Chicago Bears salary cap situation. Their four newest rookie signings locked in and ready to work, the drama surrounding three top picks still sitting without contracts, and why this roster, quietly, methodically, almost suspiciously calmly, might be building into something that this city has not seen in a very long time. Buckle up. This one has layers, and we are going all the way to the bottom. Let's start with the money, because that is always where the real story lives in the National Football League. After officially signing 4 of their 2026 draft picks to their rookie contracts, the Chicago Bears are sitting at just under $12 million in available cap space. According to SpotRack's most recent figures, the number lands right around $11,900,000. On the surface, that sounds like breathing room. That sounds like a front office with genuine options heading into the summer. But here's the part that should make every Bears fan's eye twitch at least a little. The team is simultaneously carrying over $20 million in dead cap money. $20 million allocated to players who will not be suiting up for Chicago this fall. That is not a typo. That is a real number sitting on the books right now, and it absolutely matters when you are trying to understand what moves are still available and what moves are effectively off the table for the remainder of this offseason. Now, before you spiral, context is everything in this league, so let me give you the full picture. The bulk of that dead cap breaks down into two main chunks. Roughly $4 million is tied to Drew Dalman, the center the Bears brought in and subsequently moved on from. That is a manageable and largely unavoidable hit. Those things happen in roster construction, and $4 million is not the number that keeps a general manager up at night. The bigger pill to swallow is the $12 million in dead money attached to DJ Moore, the wide receiver who was traded away, but whose guaranteed money is still counting against this year's cap. Now here is the twist that completely flips the narrative on that number. The Bears received a second-round pick back in the DJ Moore deal, and that pick became Logan Jones, the center out of Mississippi State who is now one of their 3 unsigned top rookies still waiting to sign. So yes, they are eating dead cap, but they converted that dead cap into a future starting caliber offensive lineman. That is not a loss. That is a chess move executed across multiple roster cycles. In Fave's personal opinion, Ryan Poles has absorbed a tremendous amount of criticism in this city, and some of it has been fair. But the man understands how to turn a painful short-term transaction into a long-term asset. You can debate the DJ Moore trade until training camp opens. You cannot tell me Logan Jones was a bad return on that investment. Now let's get into the meat of this story, the 4 rookies who did sign, because these contracts are borderline criminal in the best possible way for the Bears. We are talking about 4 players, all of whom carry legitimate starting upside, all locked in for 4 years, all on deals that average somewhere between $1 and $1.7 million annually. In 2026, in the National Football League, you cannot find a starting caliber player for $1.7 million a year. You cannot find a serviceable backup at most positions for that number. The Bears essentially went shopping at a clearance rack and walked out with 4 potential starters. Let me break down each signing individually, because the details here paint a very specific portrait of a front office that knows exactly what it is building toward. First up, Xavon Thomas, wide receiver out of LSU, selected 89th overall in the 3rd round of the 2026 NFL Draft. 4 years, $6.8 million in total cap value, averaging $1.7 million per year through 2029, with a signing bonus of $1.42 million. Before we even get to what he brings on the football field, let's address the elephant in the room. This pick was polarizing from the moment the Bears made it. Multiple draft analysts had Thomas projected anywhere from the 6th to the 7th round. He did not appear on some prominent top 150 prospect rankings at all. The Bears took him at 89 overall. That is a significant reach by conventional draft board metrics, and the football media world was not shy about pointing that out loudly and repeatedly in the hours after the selection. But here is where the story gets genuinely interesting. Ben Johnson's explanation for the pick sounded remarkably similar to the way he used to talk about Jameson Williams during his time coordinating the Detroit Lions offense. And that comparison should give serious pause to everyone who reflexively dismissed this selection. Johnson pointed specifically to Thomas's 4.28-second 40-yard dash, the third fastest time among all receivers at the 2026 NFL Combine, and reportedly the fastest 40-yard dash time ever recorded by a Chicago Bears draft pick. The fastest. In the entire history of this franchise, they have never drafted a player this fast. Let that land for a moment, because that is not a small thing. Speed at that level is a finite, irreplaceable resource in professional football, and the Bears just secured it for $1.7 million a year. The speed Thomas brings to Chicago shows up both vertically and horizontally, and according to multiple reports coming out of rookie minicamp at Hallis Hall, he is a legitimately hard man to bring down once the ball is in his hands. That combination, elite straight-line speed paired with lateral agility and a low center of gravity, is precisely what Ben Johnson has been building his entire offensive philosophy around. When Johnson was in Detroit, speed was the weapon used to stretch defenses horizontally, to force single coverage on boundary receivers, to create conflict for safeties rotating late. Now he has that weapon in Chicago for $1.7 million a year. You want to call it a reach? Fine, but understand what you are actually arguing against when you make that case. And it is not just the speed. Thomas produced as a ball carrier across his college career, averaging 5 yards per carry on his rushing attempts, adding an offensive dimension that defenses cannot simply ignore. He spent 2 seasons at Mississippi State before transferring to LSU, meaning he operated in 2 completely different offensive systems, adapted to different coaching staffs and different playbooks, and produced meaningfully in both environments. That kind of adaptability matters enormously when you are asking a young receiver to learn an NFL system from scratch under a first-year head coach running a brand new offense. And then there is the return game, where Thomas was arguably even more dominant than he was as a pass catcher. He led the entire Southeastern Conference in kickoff return yardage, averaging 26.4 yards per attempt. He scored on returns. He was electric every single time he touched the ball in open space. So you are not just getting a developmental wide receiver on this contract. You are getting a chess piece, a gadget weapon, a return specialist who immediately upgrades one of the Bears' shakiest units from a season ago, all on a deal that costs barely more than the league minimum. Fave's take on the Velus Jones comparisons being thrown around? They are lazy, and they ignore everything. Velus Jones was a one-dimensional returner who never demonstrated the offensive creativity or route flexibility that Thomas showed across 4 college seasons in 2 different programs. Does Thomas need to develop as a polished route runner at the NFL level? Without question. Is this a projection pick that carries real developmental risk? Absolutely. But calling it a repeat of that previous third-round mistake tells me you watched the highlights and stopped reading. Ben Johnson is not drafting returners. He is drafting weapons and deploying them in ways that make defensive coordinators lose sleep on Tuesday nights. Put this kid in space, let that 4.28 breathe, and that signing bonus of $1.42 million is going to look like the steal of this entire draft class before the calendar flips to 2027. Now, let's talk about Malik Muhammad, and this is where things get really interesting from a scheme and roster construction standpoint. 4th round, 124th overall, out of the University of Texas. The Bears actually traded up 5 spots in the 4th round specifically to land this player, which is an organizational statement that deserves more attention than it has received. When a front office moves up on draft day for a specific player, it means they had him targeted on their board, and they were not willing to risk losing him to another team. That is not a casual pick born out of taking the best available option. That is a deliberate, pre-planned acquisition of a specific person for a specific purpose. His contract reflects that intent. 4 years, $5.42 million in total cap value, $1.1 million signing bonus, averaging roughly $1.37 million per season. 4 years of a player they wanted badly enough to give up future draft capital for, locked in at just over $1 million a year. Here is the context that makes Muhammad's signing genuinely significant, beyond just the financial efficiency. The Bears are at a genuine inflection point at cornerback entering this season. Tyreek Stevenson has been a physically talented but inconsistent starter who is in the final year of his rookie deal, which means a major contract decision is coming for this organization in the near future. That creates urgency around finding the next generation of cornerback talent, and it creates that urgency right now rather than 12 months from now. Dennis Allen, who came in this offseason with a very specific defensive philosophy built around technical coverage ability and disciplined zone principles, has been clear about the type of defensive back he wants operating in his system. Not just athletes, technicians, Players who process route combinations quickly, who anticipate breaks before receivers make them, who can handle both press man and off coverage without getting exposed in either alignment. According to draft evaluator Zach Pearson, Muhammad checks every one of those boxes. Pearson described him as someone with outstanding vision and adherence to zone coverage principles, capable of playing with ideal efficiency at all three levels of the field, and called him a plus pattern matcher, meaning he stays in phase with receivers through their breaks and does not surrender the cushion that leads to easy completions underneath. That is a very specific and sophisticated skill set that does not always show up cleanly on a traditional stat sheet, and it is precisely the skill set Dennis Allen has built successful defenses around throughout his entire coaching career. And Muhammad could contribute meaningfully as a rookie. Think about the full context here. Stevenson's contract situation creates genuine uncertainty about his long-term future in Chicago. The secondary got exposed in coverage multiple times last season in ways that should concern any Bears fan looking ahead to a full 17-game schedule. Muhammad represents a Dennis Allen cornerback pick from top to bottom, chosen for a specific technical reason within a specific defensive framework, locked in for 4 years at a price that gives the organization maximum roster flexibility. Fave's honest opinion? This is the most underappreciated signing of the four. Everyone is talking about Xavon Thomas because speed and draft controversy make for compelling television. Malik Muhammad is quietly the most scheme-critical acquisition in this entire draft class. And 4 years from now, when he is starting on the outside in Dennis Allen's defense, people are going to wonder why they ever slept on him. Third signing, Keshan Elliott, outside linebacker out of Arizona State. And this is the contract that had Fave personally doing a double take when the numbers came across. 4 years, 4.8, $4 million total cap value, $467,000 signing bonus, averaging $1.21 million per year for 4 full seasons. For a player who posted 98 total tackles, 7 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, 21 pressures, and 14 tackles for loss in a single college season, 14 tackles for loss. That is the kind of production that forces offensive coordinators to draw up chip blocks and slide their entire protection scheme toward one specific defender. And the Bears have him locked in at $1.2 million a year. The linebacker situation in Chicago entering this season carries some genuine question marks behind the top of the depth chart. TJ Edwards is on a 2-year extension. Devin Bush is under contract but is not exactly a long-term cornerstone at the position. Ruben Hippolyte is on a 3-year deal. Jack Sanborn is working on a 1-year prove-it contract, which means he could be a cap casualty at any moment, depending on how the roster shakes out through the summer. Of all the linebackers currently under contract for the Chicago Bears, Elliott now holds the longest deal in the entire linebacker room, 4 years. That is not a depth signing, that is organizational intent expressed directly through contract structure. They are not bringing Keshan Elliott in to be a rotational piece on a short-term deal. They are building around him over time and giving him the runway to develop into a cornerstone piece at the position. And the production at Arizona State was not a fluke, manufactured by a weak schedule or favorable matchups. He was consistently disruptive across all 3 phases of linebacker play, rushing the passer, stopping the run, and getting into pass coverage when called upon. The Bears ranked 27th in the league in run defense last season. 27th. That is an area of desperate and urgent need, and Elliott's 14 tackles for loss demonstrate the instincts and relentless motor required to attack the line of scrimmage and make plays before they develop into positive yardage. He is not a one-dimensional pass rush specialist. He is a complete linebacker prospect who disrupts plays in every phase. And at 4 years and $1.21 million per year, Fave would argue this is the single best value contract the Bears signed across this entire draft class. Not the flashiest signing. The best pure value, plain and simple. And then there is the 4th signing, the one that completes this quartet and proves just how systematically the Bears have approached this entire draft class from start to finish. Jordan Vandenberg, defensive tackle out of Georgia Tech. 6th-round pick, number 213 overall. A selection the Bears had to trade 2 7th-round picks to acquire, moving up specifically to ensure they landed him rather than watching another team take him first. His contract numbers: 4 years, $4.6 million total cap value, $231,000 signing bonus, averaging $1.15 million per season. He is the most affordable of the 4 signings on an annual basis, and he may ultimately prove to be the most important one for the Bears' long-term defensive line depth and continuity. Here is why interior defensive line depth matters so specifically for Chicago entering this season. Gervon Dexter is in the final year of his current contract, creating an impending decision that the front office will have to make. Grady Jarrett has 2 years remaining on his deal, but the structure of that contract means cutting him after year 1 would generate minimal dead cap, which means he is not actually locked in for both seasons in any financially binding sense. The Bears needed a young, athletic defensive tackle on a long-term affordable deal who could grow into a rotation contributor and eventually develop into a genuine starter. Jordan Vandenberg is precisely that player. His Georgia Tech production was consistent and impressive across the board. 42 total tackles, 3 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, 25 pressures, and 5 tackles for loss in his final college season. The pressure numbers specifically, 20, 5 pressures, indicate an interior rusher who can collapse the pocket and create disruption even when he does not ultimately receive credit for a sack on the stat sheet. Dennis Allen reportedly expressed genuine surprise that Vandenberg was still available in the 6th round, suggesting the Bears had him graded significantly higher on their internal board than his consensus market value indicated. When a defensive coordinator says out loud that he was shocked to get a specific player where he got him, that is not a throwaway comment for public consumption. That is a real signal about how this organization valued this specific player in their evaluation process. The Bears now have the longest active contract among their defensive tackles attached to Vandenberg's 4-year deal. 4 years of a player they had to give up draft capital to acquire, locked in at just over $1 million annually, with the ceiling to develop into a genuine starting piece as the roster around him evolves over the next several seasons. That is not a depth acquisition. That is a future foundation piece at a position of real and documented organizational need. So let's zoom all the way out now and look at what the Chicago Bears have actually constructed here, because the big picture is even more compelling than any individual signing taken in isolation. Think about what Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson have done across this entire offseason cycle. They brought in Dennis Allen to comprehensively overhaul a defense that struggled repeatedly last season. They converted a painful trade into future draft capital. They drafted for specific scheme fits within a specific defensive and offensive framework rather than simply chasing consensus board rankings and public opinion. And now they have locked in 4 rookie contributors, a blazing fast gadget receiver who is the fastest player this franchise has ever drafted, a technically advanced cornerback built specifically for Allen's coverage system, a pass rush linebacker who posted 14 tackles for loss in college, and an interior defensive tackle with legitimate starting upside who had to be traded up to acquire. All on 4-year contracts at an average annual cost of roughly $1.3 million combined. All 4 of them together are costing this team just over $5 million per year in total average annual value. That is less than what many NFL teams pay a single backup offensive lineman in 2026. That is how you build a winning roster in the modern National Football League. You identify the players flying under the consensus radar, you develop them within your specific system, and you lock them in before their market value catches up to their actual production value. The Bears have watched teams like Kansas City and Philadelphia execute this model for years, building through the draft, finding genuine value in later rounds, creating depth that eventually turns into starting production. And it finally looks like Chicago is executing that same model with real precision and genuine organizational alignment from the head coach through the front office. Now let's talk about the 3 rookies still unsigned, because this is where the real financial tension in this story lives heading into the summer. The Bears have 3 picks from this draft class who have not yet signed their rookie contracts, and collectively these 3 represent the most expensive portion of the class by a significant margin. First-round safety Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon, selected 25th overall. Second-round center Logan Jones, the player who came back as compensation in the DJ Moore trade package. And third-round tight end Sam Roush. These 3 picks are going to consume the majority of that $11.9 million in remaining cap space, and how the Bears structure those deals will determine what, if any, free agent additions remain available before training camp opens. Thieneman is the most important of the 3 by a considerable margin, simply because first-round rookie contracts come with 5th-year team options, which gives the organization cost-controlled roster control through year 5 rather than just 4. That option is a significant structural asset, which is precisely why first-round signings always take slightly longer to finalize. There are more variables to negotiate, more contract structure to work through on both sides. Thieneman was one of the most technically refined safeties in this entire draft class, and the Bears selected him specifically to anchor the back end of Dennis Allen's new defensive system. His contract will consume the largest single chunk of that remaining cap space. Logan Jones at center is the next priority. Offensive line continuity is everything in Ben Johnson's system, and getting a starting caliber center locked in before training camp reps begin is genuinely critical for Caleb Williams' development, comfort, and consistency in the pocket. Roush at tight end rounds out the class, and while tight end is historically a position that demands patience as players develop at the NFL level, Ben Johnson has consistently featured the tight end as a major component of his passing game architecture everywhere he has coached. The Bears can get all three of these deals done within that $11.9 million window. It will be tight. There will be minimal margin for significant free agent additions afterward, but the structure of these contracts is largely governed by the NFL's collective bargaining agreement at the rookie level, which sets the parameters for every pick at every slot. This is more procedural timeline than contentious negotiation. Fave's overall grade on this draft class and these signings? A genuine, well-earned B+. The four signees represent exceptional value at their respective price points across the board. The unsigned trio of Thieneman, Jones, and Roush represent legitimate impact players who will anchor key positions for multiple seasons, if their development tracks the way this front office clearly believes it will. The only real and legitimate critique, and it is a fair one, is that the Bears did not address edge rusher earlier in this draft with greater urgency. The pass rush remains a genuine question mark at the top of the depth chart, and that is a problem that does not get quietly resolved by October when divisional opponents begin scheming specifically around your weaknesses. Keshan Elliott can rush from the linebacker position and will bring pressure, but the Bears likely need at least one more true edge presence before this roster is complete and fully ready to compete. That note aside, what Poles and Johnson have built here is cohesive, financially intelligent, and genuinely exciting for a fan base that has been waiting a very long time to feel this way, heading into a new season. The talent is real, the contracts are smart. The vision, Dennis Allen's defense paired with Ben Johnson's offense built around a healthy and hungry Caleb Williams, is coming into sharp, tangible focus with every signing, every minicamp rep, and every organizational decision this front office makes. Chicago has not been truly scary in a long time, not in the way that makes opposing coordinators redesign their game plans on a Tuesday night. But the pieces are lining up in a way that suggests that era might be significantly closer than anyone outside of Hallis Hall is willing to publicly admit right now. Bear down, baby. The building is happening right in front of us, and if you are not paying close attention, you are going to miss it. And that is exactly where we leave it today, because you now have everything you need to understand what the Bears just did and precisely why it matters more than the mainstream conversation is giving it credit for. 4 signings, 4 future starters, 4 contracts that collectively cost less than what some teams pay a single backup tight end in this league. Drop your grade on this Bears draft class down in the comments right now. I want to know if you are riding with the B+, or if you think Poles and Johnson deserve something higher or something lower. Every single opinion is welcome down there. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button right now so you do not miss a single update as training camp approaches and this roster picture gets even clearer and even more exciting. Smash the like button if you believe the Bears are genuinely for real this year. This is Fave, this is Favs, and I will catch you on the next one.